Well, if you go into virtually any store these days, you'll find that most products, from food, clothing, furniture to appliances, are no longer Australian. And it's only getting worse. Tonight, Helen Wellings reveals the foreign takeover now includes a part of our national heritage that's been sold off to a Japanese company.
I love a sunburned country.
The Akuba effect makes people think that they're buying something which is Australian, when effectively it is not.
Why do we need to actually import products when we've got such a great plethora of beautiful Australian produce that is so readily available?
It's the Great Disappearing Act. Our skills, machinery, companies, products, even homes, our land, are being sold off at a rapid rate, in foreign hands for good. Tracking down an Aussie product is like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
So, Lynn, in terms of our frozen vegetables, there's not much that's Australian. This is from China, and these onions are from Poland.
They're made in New Zealand.
And the peas are from the UK.
And sold at about $2 a pack.
It's often impossible to tell dinky dye from imported because our governments allow confusing labelling. Product of Australia means the food was grown here. But made in Australia, the produce can come from overseas, but just be processed or transformed here.
Foreign companies use things like koalas, Australian flags, Australian maps, even the word Australia, to infer that they're Australian.
Lynn Wilkinson of AUSBUY, which supports Australian-owned companies and products, says the top 100 food brands, only 20 are controlled by Australian interests.
You've got a major brand like Dairy Farmers, which represented 54% of our dairy industry. It's been taken over by the Japanese. You have Golden Circle that was taken over by Heinz. Recently you had CSR Sugar being taken over by a Singaporean company.
90% of supermarket products are imported or owned by foreign companies. Australia's now importing more than $1.5 billion worth of fruit and vegetables a year, increasing 5% every year. Iconic Aussie brand Bonds has moved production overseas. Tim Tams was Arnott's, now owned by big American Campbell's.
These companies are owned by Coca-Cola, by Heinz and by Simplot. Uncle Toby's is owned by Nestle, the Swiss company, and Just Juice is the berry company, which is owned by Kirin, the Japanese, says made in Australia, and it's got fully imported ingredients.
I love the horizons.
The latest shock, the historic Gunnedah property, Currumbede, Dorothy McKellar's homestead, which inspired her to write our most famous Australian poem, My Country, has just been sold to a Japanese company for $14 million. That's right, 2,600 hectares of our precious heritage is about to be turned into a coal mine.
The white brown land for me.
The majority of our clothes are coming from China, and then there's other places emerging like Vietnam, Bangladesh and Cambodia. And in the third world countries, they're entitled to bring those goods in duty-free, which means they pay no import duties whatsoever. And that drives the price down in the Australian market.
We're now importing 1 billion articles of clothing a year. Joe Kellock, Chief Executive of the Council of Textile and Fashion Industries of Australia, says our skills and jobs are disappearing offshore.
It's very serious. We're very concerned about what's happened to the Australian-made content in the fashion market.
One of the great reasons why they love Q is because we are still predominantly Australian-made.
Q, a great Australian fashion success story, was founded 42 years ago by the same family that still owns it. CEO David Kesby says they'll never be tempted to sell out.
We've got suppliers that have worked with us for over 30 years. So by making here in Australia, we get to deliver in-store much quicker than all of our contemporaries the latest international fashion trends.
There's a booming backlash against imports in many quarters.
It's about bringing back the milkman.
Back to basics is the concept of Aussie Farmers Direct. It takes orders online and delivers fresh food, including meat, straight from the farm to your table.
It's all Australian and it's all fresh.
Chief Executive Braden Lord says buy local produce, cut out the middleman, save a packet.
Mandarins from Mildura in Victoria, and then we've got cheese, pasta sauces, bread.
The key message for shoppers in preventing cheap imports taking over our local industries and jobs?
We're allowing these companies to get away with it. What AUSBUY has been advocating is country of origin and true ownership of all of our products on our shelves.